Today we are going to discuss about our new paper, that is Contemporary International Relations. This book entitles about after the establishment and UNO and after post-World War. Post-World Wars means after 1950s onwards, what are the situations are happened in the world international political system about the establishment of new modern state system and also new international economic system, because about 2/3 members of new modern states are depending upon the superpowers, means successor states in the world wars, because already we have been discussed about third world nations, means after getting independence after the world war and after the colonial era ending time, that nations are called as third world nations. So all the third world nations are depending upon the that north states, means north means developed nations in the world. So because at that time more than 200 states are under developing, means that are all are small states, because most of the developing countries, means last countries in the world war, are smaller in size, means smaller in territorial context and smaller in their economy, means their financial situations are also very bad because they lost everything in the world wars. So that's why they need the help of the developed nations or the superpowers in the at the time of the post-war, because they're having, because they are looted these developing nations. So that's why they are depending upon their support. So in this regard, the developing nations need more mutual cooperation between the developed nations. That's what this contemporary international relations began with, the mutual economic cooperation. That's what we call international economic cooperation. Means every nation wants to become an independent economic state, because they need their own economy, they need their own financial assistance, and also they need to use their natural resources in full-fledged mode, because they are not having proper equipment, they are not having proper technical support or technology to utilize their natural resources. So that's what they are depending upon the modern Western countries. Means they are having modern technology, they are having modern equipment, machineries. So that's what these developing nations are always depending upon the developed nations. So in this regard, if we discuss this financial cooperation has been started after the establishment of the World Bank. Before we are going to discuss about the World Bank, the United Nations organization, already we have discussed about its motto and its goals. But in that United Nations organizations, there is one more important objective is there. That is economic cooperation between the member states. We are already discussed, there are around 193 members are there in the United Nations organization. So the United Nations organization wants to help each other, means one or more states or all other states are between relationship between the developed and underdeveloped states. So with the support of United Nations organizations, all the developed nations and developing nations are came together to discuss about their economic integration. Means if they are supported mutually, the developing nations are will grow so early. So in this type of economic cooperation, they are getting still support from the modern Western countries. So even we are already discussed, apart from the United Nations organization, there are several regional organizations also there. We are going to discuss about in next class. There are several regional organizations like European Union, African Union, SAARC, Asian, many group of countries like G7, G15, G20, like many regional organizations has been came together to mutual cooperation between the nations or entire their group. Means even several groups are having several members. So in that group of members, there is some restrictions. There are some free relaxations to develop themselves. So there are some relaxations like free trade or free tax system between the group of nations, because every regional cooperation is established for the sake of economic cooperation between the member states. So that's why there are several organizations are there in the form of economical cooperation between the nations. If we observe, the first thing is, in this situation, after the establishment of UNO, in the name of production, in the name of imports and exports, every nation wants relation between the other states. So if they are having excess resources, then they want to export that excess resources, and where there is a lack of resources in their state, they want to import from the other states. So there is a mutual trade cooperation between the other states. So that's what every nation is depending upon the other states in the world. They are undergoing to sign treaties like free trade system or less tax system between the these trade system. Means there are several tax system is there. There are not heavy taxes, because everyone wants to develop themselves so easily. Because if the burden of taxes upon developing nations, that is the one of the major problem to develop their economy system. So every nation in the world, every developing nation wants support from the developed nation. So in this type of economic integration, there are several issues are there. Several objectives are there, like free trade area has been established for the sake of economic cooperation, and there is a customs union, there is common market system for the imports and exports of goods and products in the name of international trade system. And also there is a regional cooperations between the in the world nations in the name of economic cooperation. Like there are several economic unions are there. Even UNO also established several economic support organizations like IBRD, means World Bank, International Monetary Fund. There is a World Trade Organizations to moderate international market system, to support developing nations in the name of World Free Trade System. So there are several treaties also made by the United Nations organizations in the form of international economic cooperation. So in previous classes, we have discussed about the single motto of United Nations, that is peace, international peace. So in this chapter, we are going to elaborate the economic relations between the international politics. So if we observe, the free trade system is established for the growth of the economy of all the nations in the world. So there are several free trade agreements are there. There are several if we observe, there are patent rights. Like if any nation wants to try to create a new product, try to make a new product, they will have separate patent rights. So if we want to produce that new product, we have to buy the patent rights from the manufacturer, like other states. So the developed nations are selling their patent rights to the developing nations in the form of mutual economic cooperation. So if we observe, there are we are accepting several foreign direct investments to our economy. If we take an example of India, we are expecting more foreign direct investments in our economy system. So many multinational companies are came here and established their market in our land. So like many MNCs, like even we are observing many supermarkets are there, many multinational marts are there, like Walmart and Metro, Super. These all are the came from the outside of India. So in the name of foreign direct investments into our nation. So they will help to us in the name of providing employment, in the name of providing cheap products at means good products at cheaper rates to reduce economic burden onto the our people. So there is a mutual technology sharing also there. We are already discussed about nuclear technology sharing. So at that time we are expecting technical support from the other states in the making of new technical devices, like even mobile technology or computer technology. Like many technologies has been exchanging between the nations in the form of economical cooperation. So there are several disadvantages also there. Means we have discussed about the patent rights that is come under to the intellectual property rights. So they are owning the rights, but they are giving the rights in the limited time period. If we buy for the 1 year, we have to pay for the 1 year term amount to them. So like that, we don't get more time to utilize their technology or utilize the technical support from them. So if they are focusing on to the developing nations, they can help, but they are in the need of our natural resources at cheaper prices. So they want to get valuable things, valuable products, or valuable natural resources at the cheaper rate in the name of a mutual exchange of technology. So United Nations organizations made several institutions like International Bank uh, for the reconstruction of this economic system. So if we discuss about this International Bank for the reconstruction and development, means World Bank. World Bank is established for the sake of mutual cooperation between the all the states in the world. If we discuss about this World Bank, there are around 190 members are there in the group of this World Bank. So this concept has been came from the Bretton Woods Conference. So Bretton Woods Conference is the basic foundation stone for the establishment of this International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. So if there is in that conference, many leaders of the developed nations and many leaders from the underdeveloping nations also has been participated and has been discussed about to establish a independent international organization for the economic assistance to the needy nations in the world. So in the form of this support to reduce the poverty in the developing nations, there has been created this international organization in the world. So in the globe around vast countries are there in the need of their economic development. So if we observe like India, many developing countries are still expecting financial support from this World Bank and other international economic organizations like International Monetary Fund, and we are getting support from the World Trade Organizations. So in need, every nation there are in need of these international organizations financial assistance for their economic development. So even UNO has been established many several international organizations for the financial support to the needy nations. So if we discuss about this World Bank is a part of established for the encouragement of developing nations to reduce their poverty in their country. to provide better employment for their people. So in the name of that system, the UNO and this World Bank suggested all the nations to get support from these organizations in the name of financial assistance, in the name of technical assistance, in the name of trade support. They will provide support from the organizations to develop themselves. So this bank has several groups to support. If actually this Bretton Woods conference has been established for the sake of the international financial cooperation between the nations. So in this conference, they have initiated to establish World Bank and International Monetary Fund for the multilateral financial relations between all the nations in the world. So after the World War II, every nation is in need of financial support from the others. So that's why the United Nations organizations has been suggested to support financially for the developing nations. Today, World Bank focuses its services in all the middle income countries like India, Pakistan, China, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, like many developing countries are there now. So if like Indonesia or Thailand, many countries are fast growing with the support of this World Bank. So at the same time, these developing nations are expecting economic growth to distribute entire their population. So they are expecting FDIs. We already discussed foreign direct investments are eagerly expecting from the developed nations to remove the poverty and to provide good employment for the youth of the people. So if we observe this World Bank raises more funds from the various financial markets, such as they have been expected funds from the developed nations like USA, Britain, France, Italy, China. Like that, they are collecting funds from the developed nations and give to the underdeveloped nations in the form of economic assistance. So even every year it is expecting more funds from the developed nations, and it is adjusted to the developing nations. So there are several international financial corporations are there. They are established for the use of third party resources, like many projects are expected to establish in the developing nations. So to provide better opportunities for the people of the needy nation. So in this situation, there are very vast groups are there for the establishment of the new multinational organizations in the developing nations. So if you observe in India, many international markets are established for the development of India, but they are earning, they are getting more income from our side, and they are providing less employment, and they are giving less opportunities for the people of India. But because government needs to be moderate its functions and its functioning system time to time. If there is no observation on that organization, they will also loot our employees. Even they are giving less salaries and they are utilizing our services in heavy. So that's why every government in the developing nations has to be moderate the situations of the these international multinational corporations. And also in this World Bank, the World Bank is clearly focuses 6 areas. If we discuss about that, first one is overcome poverty by spurring growth, means to reduce poverty. The World Bank is there for the providing employment from the support of developed nations like America, like Britain, like France, China. Even we are expecting more support from the developed nations in the name of poverty alleviation. So, and also next to one more thing is help to reconstruct countries emerging from war. So we already discussed after the establishment of the UNO, every nation is to stand on the motto of United Nations in the name of international peace and security. So everyone wants to live away from the war. If the thing is happen soon, they have to discuss and they have to mediate to remove that dispute thing. So re-emerging, restructuring the country in the name of recovery from the loss of the world war, every developing nation wants to the support from this World Bank. So World Bank also provides a customized solution to help middle income countries like third world nations in the country from the out of the poverty. So there are several programs are there, like there are several organs of international organizations of like UNO. There is UNICEF is there to provide better opportunities for the needy children in the entire world, not only in developed, not only in developing nations. So to remove poverty from the developing nations, they are focusing and they are providing better health conditions, better medical equipment to support the developing nations. So, and also to prevent climate change. So every nation has to be stand for the protection of their environment to reduce the climate change. So there is in the time of this modern time, they are growing population is there. They are utilizing many things. They are utilizing many things from the environment, but they are not protecting the environment. So it helps all the nations to protect the environment in all various things. So that's why United Nations is conducting every year in the name of protection of this global environment. They are conducting many meetings to protect our environment. So it also helps to control communicable diseases, especially like HIV/AIDS or malaria or TB, like that. In many different diseases, the United Nations is supporting, and this World Bank also spending more money on the affected countries. So the World Bank is established only for the development of all the nations in the world. It also manages international financial crisis and promotes free trade. So already we have discussed, there is in the trade system, there are taxes are there in the name of imports and exports. So the World Bank is there for the reduce the tax system on exports and imports. And one of the important economic organization is International Monetary Fund. It is also an international organization that aims to promote global economic growth and financial stability to encourage international trade and reduce poverty. So we already discussed the Bretton Woods Conference suggested to establish World Bank and IMF. IMF means this International Monetary Fund. It is working it's globally to monitor economic cooperation between the nations. So, and also it is provides a secure financial stability and facilitate international trade and promote high employment and sustainable economic growth also. So the primary purpose of establishment of IMF is ensure the stability to the international system. Means this international system of exchange rates has been moderated by the International Monetary Fund. So it is the agency of United Nations. It also has its own charter, and it is having its own structure, and it is also having financial arrangements, because the developed nations and also the members of United Nations are all are funding to these organizations to monitor the financial relations between the nations. So if there is no IMF, the trade system will be not available for the needy nations. So because we are unable to pay the more taxes on the exports. So if there is no establishment of such these organizations, we are unable to export our excess things to the other nations. So we cannot develop ourselves without any other nation's support. The IMF, this International Monetary Fund, is not only works with its members, it's also having several other members. If means there are several countries are there, they are not in the part of international organizations like IBRDR, this International Monetary Fund. They will help all the nations who are in the need of financial support from these organizations. If we want to become a member of this International Monetary Fund, countries must apply, and the IMF should accept other members willing. So if all the members are accepted the proposal of new members entry into these organizations, the membership will be accepted by the International Monetary Fund, because the membership of World Bank is conditional on being member of International Monetary Fund. So as we discussed, IBRD and IMF are the twins of Bretton Woods Conference. So if we want to become member in International Monetary Fund, the state must have membership from the World Bank. So these members govern the World Bank through a board of governors. And apart from the working of the developing countries on individual projects or mutual projects, the World Bank also works with various international institutions along with professional and the academic bodies. So if we observe, there are some kind of similarities also there between the World Bank and International Monetary Fund. Both the International Monetary Fund and World Bank were formed together at the this conference called Bretton Woods Conference, which is held in New Hampshire in July 1944. They are called Bretton Woods twins. Already we have discussed. So both are created for the support of world economy in their own unique ways, because IBRD has its own agenda, IMF has also its own agenda and its own functions and its own objectives in the name of to support the world economy in the name of financial support. So both are headquartered in Washington, DC, means District of Columbia in United States of America. So they have the same membership, as no admission into the World Bank is possible without the IMF membership. We have already discussed about this thing. If we want to get membership from the IMF, that state must have membership in the World Bank. So the management, the structure of the World Bank is largely similar to that the IMF. So voting rights of these institutions depend primarily on capital contribution of the member countries. So means we have to observe this thing, because if a nation giving more funds to this international organizations, both IMF and World Bank, they will have more powers in the functioning of these organizations. And also there are several differences are there. There are differentiation situations also maintaining between these two organizations. So the both are established for the support of global economy, right? But the World Bank is primarily a development institution, but International Monetary Fund is a cooperative institution that seeks to maintain an orderly system of payments and receipts between the nations. We already discussed. IMF stands for the support free trade system, and also it is the receipt of payments between the nations. And also the IMF exists to preserve an orderly monetary system, whereas World Bank performs an economic development trade. So as we discussed, the IMF is monitoring the imports and exports between the member states, or entire world market system. So both have different purposes. So IMF supervises the economic policies of its members and expects them to allow free exchange of their national interests or their national currencies. To keep this financial order, the IMF also acts as a provider of emergency loans to members who run into difficulties. The IMF also acts means the IMF provides loans for the purpose of in need of their members. So in exchange of a promise from the member to reform its economic policies. So if a nation wants to restructure or in the name of development of their economy, the IMF is stand for the support in the name of adjustment of financial loans to the needy states. So if we observe, they are having different funding sources. The IMF raises funds from the money from their membership fees as quotas. So each member country pays a quota based on a relative economic size, so that the larger economies pays more. So already as we discussed, if any nation pays more money, they will have separate rights or decisions in the name of decision making. They will have more powers in the organizations. So the World Bank raises most of its money through the borrowing of issues bonds to the investors. It also receives grants from the donors. So IMF exists primarily to stabilize exchange rates, while the World Bank's primary goal is reduce poverty. So if we observe, there are several issues are similar to the both organizations, and there are differences also there between these two international organizations. So the International Monetary Fund promotes monetary cooperation internationally, and the offers advice and assistance for the facilitate to building and maintaining a country's economy. So they support entire the world in the name of financial assistance. The IMF also provides loans and help countries to develop policy programs that solve balance of payment problems and to provide better opportunities to the needy nations. So if we observe, both World Bank and International Monetary Fund is established for the support to the poor countries to undertake structural adjustment programs under the economic globalization. So sometimes this has led to underdevelopment of these economies, bringing severe domestic crisis in multiple dimensions. This contributes, there will be an economic gap between different countries across the globe, because there are gap between developing and developed nations. So that is the reason these international organizations has been emerged to resolve that gap, to remove that communication gap in the name of financial gap. These organizations were emerged to reduce the gaps between the member states. And also the World Bank is established for the sake of to protect global climate change, and also it supports financial support to the needy nations. There are civil society groups also there to see the bank as unfit for the role of climate finance, or it is not providing better opportunity. For the namesake only, they are conducting several treaties or several conferences, but not protecting the environment seriously. So that's why some critics are commenting these two international organizations are in the hands of developed nations only. They are not supporting to the developing nations. So the World Bank and IMF is there for the, it's if we criticize, there are only dominated by the Western European countries or Western dominated undemocratic countries. So decisions and policies has been prepared and implemented by the leading industrialized or leading developed nations in the world. So that's why the majority of dominated countries in the world are ruling these international organizations. Like even UNO also dominated by the permanent members. All are having equal rights in general council, but there is separate organization is there, no permanent council, security council. There are only 5 members are permanent, so they are leading the United Nations organizations. Like that, these World Bank and International Monetary Fund also ruled by the dominant countries. So if we observe, these two organizations are in the exercising its powers. Both are the important institutions in international economy system. So after that, many of the criticisms aimed at these two international organizations are historical, may not hold true in contemporary times, but these two institutions are trying to reorient themselves as per the changed geo-economic realities and changing developing developmental requirements. So if we observe, there are several organizations are emerged after this establishment of these twin organizations. The national government should undertake a calibrated economic liberalization, maintaining the due autonomy of their decision making to have a win-win situation in tune with the sustainable development ethics. So we have already discussed there are several sustainable development goals are created by the international organizations like UNO to help the needy member states in the world. So in this subject, we have these international organizations, and also there are some regional organizations are there to discuss. So if we observe, many regional organizations are established for the sake of regional economical cooperation. But here as we discussed, International Monetary Fund and World Bank both are working entire the world. So their working limit is entire world, not for any separate region or any it not focuses on any several countries. Like there is no partiality between the their functioning. So as we discussed, these two international organizations are there for the support of international financial assistance to the member states. So if we discuss, many organizations, many situations also has been established for the purpose of the economic assistance. If we observe, there is a North-South dialogue has been created, means has been emerged in the part of global politics. North-South dialogue means, North means entire developed nations are called as North, and South means the third world nations or the developing nations are called as South countries. So the relationship between the North and South is very important for the development of their entire. In some ways, we have referred as it's have their own ideologies. Like North countries means like United Nations, United States of America, or Australia, Canada, Japan, New Zealand, like that. All Western European countries are having their ideology like a capitalist mentality, and on the other hand, the South countries are referred to as developing nations, has they are having different ideology from the North. Like we are having mixed ideas, or we are having socialist ideas with the developing nations. And also in some cases we are in a neutral condition between the both two blocks. As we discussed, we are not accepting both ideas. We need in the support, we need in the name of support, we are accepting their ideologies for the our development. Post Second World War, these two blocks has been emerged, and as we discussed, these various summits, various conferences, various negotiations has been made between these two blocks, north and south. So the discussions of United Security Council regarding the issue, the summit meetings, and there are several regional organizations, there are group of nations are met and discussed about this thing to the developing countries is always there for the need of the developed nations. So if we observe the objectives of North-South dialogue is mainly it's related for the financial assistance and technical assistance to the developing country. So already we have discussed every developing nation is in need of financial support, in need of technical support from the developed countries. Like all the South countries are depending upon the North bloc. So to achieve their financial growth, to achieve their financial support. So if every nation wants to remove their poverty from the support of developed nations, so this bloc is also established for the free trade system, and also in the name of industrialization they are getting support, means South getting support from the North. So the developing countries always seeking advanced technical support from the North side. So the North-South dialogue has been some kinds of gap is there in the implementation of their rules and regulations, implementation of their ideas into the other states. The gap between the developing and underdeveloping nations is grew very sharp, and it is getting very loud, means the gap between these two blocks is still there is a gap. So if we observe, because every nation wants to get as a superpower in the world, in that name the developed nations are not purely supporting the developing nations. So that's what after the 1974 the United Nations General Assembly called for the establishment of new international economic order. In short term we are called it as NIEO. So the new international economic order is established for the implementation. To recognition of creation of this new international economic order is about to get full authority over the all the states in the world. So if we observe, this system is established for the and also it is supported by the international organizations like United Nations organizations in different areas. But here the primary aim of the establishment of this international economic order is to support the all the nations without any discrimination, means without there is no restrictions over the imports and exports policy. The new international order is established for the promotion of economic development and growth of the economically deprived countries, so that they would provide better markets for the products of their developed world. So they are supporting to export the raw materials, they are supporting export excess products or excess resources in the developing countries to the developed nations, and get financial aid from that developed nations to the their economic growth. So many countries are there for the support of their developing countries, but in the name of getting superpower in the world, the United Nations, United States of America and Russia is not supporting the entire developing nations, because they have the ideological gap between the two super blocks, and there is the competition between the development of their own. So that's what they are not supporting all the nations equally. They are not treating equally to the third world nations. So if we observe, later that after the establishment of new international economic order, there is a South-South cooperation also there, because North is not supporting South. We have to remember that North means developed nation, South means developing nation. So we always says that the North not supporting South. So that's why we are established is concept like South-South dialogue. Means we means developing nations are grouped together and cooperate in the name of trade, in the name of financial support, and in the name of technical support, in the name of technology sharing. The South-South is there for the their development. So it refers to collaboration, means collaboration between the developing nations. All the third world nations are grouped together, means in the name of their economic assistance. The cooperation can take place in bilateral, sub-regional, and regional or interregional domains. Like as we discussed, there are several regional organizations established as this concept when arised. The regional organizations has been established for the regional cooperation. So if we observe what are the major implications, or what are the major objectives are there in the South-South cooperation, means to improve self-reliance from the developing countries by improving the creating capacity to find solutions to their development problems. So the developing nations are not accepting or not expecting support from the developed nations. After the establishment of new international economic order, all the developing countries are helped together. That's what they grouped together as and created for this development. So they strengthen, they promote collective self-reliance, and they promote to cooperate in all types, means all variants like social, political, and economic conditions. They utilize the excess amounts from their neighboring states. So they create new technical assistance. Those countries who are in need of technical support in this organization, they will support to each other. So if we observe this cooperation will be its agenda, means the South-South cooperation is there for the establishment of the bilateral support, bilateral relations between the member states. Everyone wants to self-reliant in the boundaries of this bloc, means the South-South dialogue is established for the cooperation between the member states. So it should not viewed as a replacement of North-South cooperation, because it is the establishment for the support together. Means sometimes developing nations depending upon the developed nations, but in the formation of this South-South cooperation, they need not get support from the developed nation. So this is founded upon a genuine, strong, broad-based solidarity in partnership. So there is no force, there is freedom for the participation into this cooperation. So sometimes every nation has its common interest. In the name of their national interest, everyone wants to get support to get rid of their problems and to reduce their poverty, to strengthen their economy. So everyone is in the need of this financial support from all the nations in the world. But there are, as we discussed, there are groups are there, they ideologically and in the name of development process, they are divided into several parts in the world. So as we discussed, after the World War, there is a situation established in the name of neo-colonialism. So after colonial rule ends, the third world nations emerged, and in the need of the support of the international organizations, like these international organizations are established for the support of the third world nations and to reduce the dominance of the developed nations, or like North countries to control the dominance over the developing nations. As we discussed before establishment of United Nations, there is a colonial rule is there now. At that time, the developed nations are dominating the developing nations or poor countries or small states. After the establishment of this, such as international organizations, they are focusing to occupy the needy nations in the name of support. They are establishing new multinational organizations in the needy nations, and they are wanted to again occupy the past situation like their colonial rule. They're forcing to adapt their ideas, adapt their ideology, adapt their entire culture. So they are focusing, but the international organizations such as international organizations means United Nations and several regional organizations are there to control the dominance of this entire dominated countries over these situations. In the global politics, there is very huge dominance over the depending nations like India, Pakistan, and even China also now emerging as a superpower in the world. The China also want to become a superpower in the world, so they is focusing to export goods like at cheaper rates to the entire the world. But in some ways, all the nations are not accepting their products. But if we observe, the global market is entirely in the hands of China. Even America also importing products from the China at cheaper rates and selling higher rates in the name of development. But there is a competition between the developed nations also in the name of occupying the superpower position. Every nation wants to occupy that condition. So that's what these superpowers are emerging superpowers are focusing the developing nations to occupy the entire economy system by their production or their products. If we observe in India, we are using more products out of Indian made products. We are using morely Chinese products only, not only Chinese. Actually, everyone hands we are using Chinese products. We are getting cheaper rates, right? So that's why they are occupying entire global market into their hands, and they are controlling the global economy with single hand, like China, America, and Russia, France, Japan. Many fastest growing countries are there to get the support from the in the name of, if we observe, they are funding to the international organizations to mute them, to should not control them, to establish this system. So they are occupying the entire marketing, and they are controlling the rates also. Even if we observe, the global market is entirely in the hands of the developed nations. So that's what every nation wants to be independent after the establishment of their modern state system. Every nation stands for their own integrity, their own sovereignty. But in the need of these kinds of financial support or financial assistance from the developed nations, or for the need of technical support, they are depending upon all the nations in the world for the sake of their development. There is need of the other states' support for their growth. So that's what several organizations are established for the sake of this international financial cooperations. As we discussed, many organizations are there. In later classes, we are going to discuss about that regional organizations like Asian SAARC, African Union, and European Union also there. We are going to discuss in next classes. Is there any doubts or queries? Please clarify with me. If there are no doubts, I will conclude the session.
No, sir.
Okay. Shall I conclude the session?
Okay, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the participation. Tomorrow at same time, we will meet together. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.